Hello, hello. Welcome back to AVX Live. I'm Joe Gilderson, President of Corporate Audio Visual Services. And once again, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Ryan Finch.
Hello. It's good to be here. I'm in a new setting. Do you like my virtual background?
That virtual background is incredible.
Yeah, and it's even got depth perception. Check this out.
Oh,
right? I know.
I've never even seen that in a virtual background. That's how good yours is. Anyways, last week we started the year off with a great discussion on digital marketing, pop-up events, and social media influencers with our friend Mike Dardano. So if you get a chance, Ryan, did you really choose the only picture
It's
where
funny.
my eyes are closed and looking down?
I just realized, because I took this screenshot maybe 30 seconds ago, and I just realized that I got none of us actually making eye contact with each other, and it looks like a terrible conversation, but it was way better than it looks.
Wow. Okay. Well, other than the picture, if you get a chance, go back and check out parts of that episode. There are actually some really interesting pieces. This week, we're going to pick up on AV technology, and we're going to discuss how people can get involved and in what way. But before we do that, Mr. Finch, tell people how they can find us.
Absolutely. You can find us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube live every single week. Just kidding. Most weeks, every single week, Wednesday, 1 p.m. And of course, if you're there, you should drop us a comment, be part of the show. We will bring you into the show. So do it. You can ask any question you want that is, age appropriate for our audience. And then, of course, you should also like, comment, share, subscribe, all the above. And if you miss this show, you will find it on YouTube afterwards, but also in little bite-sized pieces on Facebook and on Instagram afterwards. So there you have it.
I got to say, you really nailed that one.
I did. I've even thrown something in the show already. Who knows where we're going from here?
You know what I didn't hear? Music. I'm very
well. It's because I'm getting to it. No. I was told that we're not allowed to do music anymore because it's distracting, but it is good for the intro. You ready for the intro?
All right. Well, then let's get that music going because it's time to do our intro. Let me tell you about our guest, Mr. George Tucker, technology specialist here at Corporate AV. George comes to Corporate AV with 25 years of experience, having held positions as a professional recording engineer, live event production, Broadway tour support, residential and commercial integration, technology writer, automation programming, and as a tech support manager for an automation manufacturer. That's pretty much every position that exists. He has helped to co-found and build AVNation.tv, the first podcast-centric trade magazine, serving as a host and producer for the network for over 8 years. George is doing a great job heading up technology in our warehouse, and we are looking forward to having him on the show today. Please, everyone, welcome George Tucker.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Hey there.
So, George, what did you think about the music that was playing behind? I mean,
it was fabulous. It was fabulous. There you go.
Yes.
I mean,
it was Marissa.
It was catchy. I don't know if I danced to it, but it's all right.
I mean, it wasn't Henry Rollins.
No.
I don't know if that would work on this show.
No.
In general, no. But you've held a lot of different roles in this industry, so I'm really looking forward to the discussion. And I think it kind of just makes sense to kind of tell us how you got started in the whole audio, visual, and event production world.
Yeah, it was by mistake, actually. And that's a true statement. I was on track to be a writer and a historian, maybe even a little bit of philosophy. That was my track in college. But I was also in hardcore bands. I was in hardcore bands living in the East Village of New York in the 80s and traveled up and down the East Coast mostly because that was where we could afford to go. Those tours of sleeping head to toe in a van overnight and getting almost not paid for the stuff you did. And I was the drummer, not a very good drummer, not by any means, mind you. I had two or three pieces, and I could do 4/4, but don't ask me to wander. It was. But what I did find I had a knack for is that everybody always said the sound sucks, and once or twice got ahead of the board and said, you know what, I think I can do this, and they liked the sound I got them better than what they were getting from the house guys or from the kids' basement. A lot of kids' basements in those days. But we pushed on to that. I went to an AV school, or IAR, Institute of Audio Research, which is sadly no longer in existence, but was founded and run.
That's unfortunate.
It was founded and run by Al Grundy, who was a perennial president of the Audio Engineering Society for many years. And one day I decided to do that and got a job at a recording studio, a couple of recording studios. And one of the places that gave them equipment was a rental house that was becoming a staging house. And it took off from there. And it was just opportunities galore. And that's sort of how I fell into it and just went. I mean, really what happened is the equipment came, there was M&Ms in the case. And I went after the driver going, hey, there's a whole bag of M&Ms in here. And he goes, no, that's what we do. And then I saw the truck full of gear and I'm like, I need a card and I need to figure out if I can go work there. And when you're working recording studios, it's when you're first doing it, maybe you get to be a recording studio, maybe you get to touch the stuff, but it's mostly cleaning bathrooms and, getting people lunch. And in the staging shop that I started in, it was touch every piece of gear. We're relying on you to make sure these wireless work.
Well, that's interesting. Now, I have to ask you about the M&Ms. So you're saying these were just kind of like a little leave behind, here's some M&Ms, enjoy?
Yeah.
Look at you.
The company no longer exists, but it was a golden era company for many, many years. And one of the owners of the company discovered when he was taking stuff out of his trunk that the M&Ms in his trunk with the equipment didn't get over hot and didn't melt. The old line, I think, if you remember, Joe, that melts in your mouth, not in your hands.
Not in your hands, yes.
And it was a gimmick that worked. Everywhere you went, when they saw that logo roll in, everybody went for the trunk looking for the M&Ms. And there were big bags of M&Ms that they would send.
So that's akin to the whole, green M&Ms just to make sure you read the rider.
Yeah, kind of.
How did M&Ms find their way into this business so significantly? It
was quite popular at the time. I'll tell you this. It got to the point that when the new shipment came in, you were allowed to eat as many of these as you wanted to in the shop or whatever. But after a while, it's like anything. You didn't want them anymore. Trust me. They would come in and you'd smell the truck coming in with the pallets of M&Ms. You're like, oh, no. Can't do it. I still can't eat them. I still cannot smell them. It's like, oh.
There is a limit to what is too much M&Ms, but it interesting. I think there's a bit of a recurring theme, at least that I've seen in this business, which is that you did get into it by mistake, trying to do something else in the technical world.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that as important, or have you seen that as often as I have, where guys are, I wanted to go into sound, or like I'm doing some sort of video production, and rentals and staging, and I get to actually touch everything. I mean, are you unique in that way from the people you've met?
I don't know, but I think I'm similar to a lot of people in that I didn't know it existed in the form of doing staging events. I knew rock and roll. I knew Clare Brothers. I knew these guys were big trucks rolling big events. But running the stuff that we run and the corporate events and the unveilings and the sort of TV up fronts and all those kind of things, I never even knew about. I only knew about it once I joined this company, the company that I joined, and it was like, oh, wow, there's a whole opportunity here. There's more technical disciplines than I understood. There was wireless, there was audio, there was video, there was early networking back then. It was, BNC cables, not Ethernet cables, but there was lights, there was understanding automation and control of that stuff, and all that just sort of flowered into, hey, you can learn all of it, none of it, be specific. But I found it. I went back to IAR for a while asking for interns. So 2 years after my graduation, came back to them and said, hey, I've been in recording studios. I worked for Electric Lady. I worked for Hit Factory. They're great. But here's what you're going to really do. Come intern with us 3 days a week, 2 consecutive days. You're going to learn a lot about audio and video. And back then we had tape decks. We were still doing Tascam 4-track machines, the ADATs, the Tascam D88s, those kind of things. So these guys got a basis in that.
Wow. I don't know anything about what you just said too.
Well, one of the things that I found really fascinating is that I had a lot of interns through those years. I think there's about 20, and 6 of them have gone on to do some really good stuff.
Wow.
The guy I first trained in RF became the RF guy at the staging company and is now working for the NHL as their wireless guy. One of my first audio interns became a lead programmer, a lead educator at Yamaha. And those are the proud things. I actually had a guy come in who was a bike messenger, saw what we were doing and went, "This is wild. You guys do all this? How do you get a job like this?" And I said, "Well, send a resume. You know, you have to be technical, but you don't have to be." He sent me a handwritten pencil resume.
Oh, yes.
And I called him back and said, "This doesn't work like this." He was young. He was probably 19, 20, 22. And he didn't have a computer. So he came into the shop. We typed out his computer, gave him some envelopes and said, "Now mail this to me and I'll call you when I get it." And he spent almost 15 years at that company, growing with it and becoming a real expert. You know, and that's like, we can do this.
That's cool.
So there you go. Good career advice. Type it.
Well, it's a lot like the punk rock ethos. You know, the punk rock was about DIY. Like, I can play that. I can do this. And in many ways, this industry is, you know, to a certain level, I can get in and I can actually help right from the get-go. And then it just goes out from there.
100%. And that's part of, I think, what we'll discuss a little bit later on in our conversation. But you're kind of unusual in the sense that you're also a writer. So tell us how you got kind of involved in that part. That's unusual.
You know, I know a lot of guys who write for the trades, like the trade magazines and stuff, right? What is writing? Writing to me it's necessary, right? Like any artistic endeavor, I suppose. I can't not write. I'll admit that I don't like the process of writing. I like the conceptual, and I like when I finally finish it. But that was all about trying to express something that I wasn't finding in the industry, in the trade magazines or any of the blogs I would read. It was all very static and, well, I want to say professional. It had a very succinct format that I didn't like. And I wanted to bring into that the emotion, the ethereal, how we really feel when we work, even if I wasn't using the flowery language. And that's how I would write about stuff. And I didn't do a lot of reviews of gear. I did about what's happening in the industry and why we're at this point and the history of it and what comes about from that. And that led to some trade magazine stuff. That led to AV Nation. So we were blogging for that when we started it. And it led to me writing for some companies on the side, which was a real benefit to me during the pandemic, that I was able to up from 2 or 3 articles a week for them to 20, 25 articles a week, you know, keeping me busy, you know, writing articles and blogs for people under their name and, you know, sort of evoking, hey, why you should have home theater or the benefits of doing something and why you need this company to help you upgrade your house or whatever. And it's that nice way of communicating. And it lets me put into it my penchant for history, knowing historical facts about, say, the movies and weaving them into this story rather than saying, you need a home theater because it's cool. That's true too. But is that enough for, you know, someone to invest $20,000 in a home theater, you know?
Huh. Well, it's interesting. Look, I mean, from what you're describing as far as your start off in writing, you're kind of like the Black Flag of writers. You know, you're like, hey, I have something to add, so I'm going to do it too. Here it comes. No,
he has no idea who Black Flag is.
I do know.
No idea.
I know.
He just looked them up. He figured it out.
I've been listening in my other earbud. I've just been listening to it the whole time. No, so George, is this something that you are continuing to do right now?
Oh yeah, I still write for some marketing firms on the side. That's my night and weekend job. I'm up at 4 a.m. basically. I get up and I write the articles, and then I get the kids ready for school and all that kind of stuff. And then I write at night sometimes. I have a couple of projects that I'm trying to work on based on the history of stuff. The boys in the shop have heard this ad nauseum, but I have a real fascination with why does certain pieces of gear become what we use? And the example I give is the 1/4-inch or headphone connector.
Okay.
And that has a long history of not just being because of the early telephony and telephone services. It goes into cultural histories of why we wanted to amplify music, what formats we tried to use. And it actually involves Hawaiian suffrage. So the Hawaiian Islands being taken over by corporations and the music of the kikakila, which is the slack key guitar, not the ukulele, but another one, that led to the formation of the certain sounds in the blues and steel pedal guitars, because the 1/4-inch connector was first used as an amplifying connection for a kikakila by Rickenbacker. And it became the standard, and that's how you sort of flow through.
That's the rabbit hole right there.
I'm going to need Kikakila on a Rickenbacker on a banner.
There's no chance. There's no chance.
Great book, Michael Trout, Kikakila. Tells the whole history of Hawaii and the Kikakila.
I couldn't even attempt to pull that off. So.
But everything's telephony or based in stuff like Alexander Graham Bell did not look to make a phone. He was making telegraph tools and also tools for the deaf, trying to imitate using sort of an organ that would then move air bowels, bezels and stuff to simulate speech for the deaf to try to learn how to talk. And he came across something that then was transmitting stuff down the wire and went, ooh,
accidents.
I can do this. Yeah.
Wow.
But the stuff we use actually affected culture more than we understand. That's so anyway. We could spend the whole show doing this and it would be encyclopedic.
See, because now, come on. Is that it? Is that it? Kikakila?
K-I-K-I. Yeah. Kikakila.
Nice. See, like I'm trying everything I can right now to hold myself back from asking you what the most interesting piece of trivial but AV related thing that you know and or learned one time is.
Oh, put me on the spot. Jeez.
I know but I've been holding back from doing it. So you can marinate it. You don't have to answer right now, Joe. We can move on to another question. But on the back burner, at the end of the show, I'm going to ask you again. And I want something juicy.
He is coming back, George. He's coming back. But meanwhile, keep out of Rickenbacker.
Is it a CH? Or
I don't know. We're going to keep it going. Anyways. Well, listen, what's really interesting besides the Kikakila and the Rickenbacker is all of the different kind of sides of the AV world and event production world. There's not too many people that have worked in theater, automation, installation, and staging. Now, because some of them can be really different, what are some of the differences you've seen in how people approach it and in those segments of the industry?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with staging, we are more rock and roll. And I use that term as, we have to be right the first time. And we are the sort of gypsies that come in, have to set up, get it going, make it right, get out, and move on.
We like to say pirates, though, instead of
pirates.
gypsies.
There you go, pirates. Sorry. And I don't have my skull and crossbones on today.
Gypsy University, though. Hold on. We got something here.
Trademark.
So there's a difference, like installation and theatrics have a lot more planning that goes on. And you have long moments of rehearsals and things that are worked out, and you can ring out a system for a corporate installation. But when we're doing it live, it's messier. I know that a lot of times I'm on the LinkedIn boards, and there's guys that were installers looking at, look at this mess of wire, and all of us in the broadcast / staging, we're like, oh yeah, par for the course, guys, because we got to be in and we got to be out. The ballroom's not going to give us all day to get out. And that you have to just set it up. Doesn't work. Great. Don't touch it.
Don't touch
it. Nobody go after that. There is a more methodical way of working in installations, and the same thing with theater. You're really sort of following the exact script to make sure we find workarounds, we find solutions, and not to say everything's hodgepodge, but right. It's, we have a concept, we know what our tools are, but we have to work around any problems and get them to go right away. Theater, it's a very precise, once you're in, it's just what you do every day. With the roadshow people, they just make sure that the room sounds right. Are the speakers that are in the theater that we've arrived at worth what they said they were going to be? And did the advanced guy get it right? And then it's just about making sure that you run on time every time. I liked every aspect of them. When I did that, I was working for theatrics, mostly doing captioning and assistive listening systems for those theaters. So I had the opportunity to get to, I think the only state I have not been to is Utah. And I've been to all the others several times, going to really fabulous 1920s, that kitschy, Americana blending of different culture, guild stuff. It's beautiful theaters to just work in. I mean, there's something attractive about that. I just never had. They didn't want us there. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. Well, that'll be on the bucket list, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you know what? I think that was really well put, because I have really only one dimension to your experiences, which is the rentals and staging world. And I completely know that behind the drape line, things might be held together with bubble gum and, and shoestring sometimes, just because it only has to work for another hour, and then it literally doesn't matter. And we're never going to do it that way again. It worked right now, and don't touch it. Absolutely, 100%. But I guess I never considered that there's another way to do it, which is more methodical and there's more time and nobody's breathing down your neck. So,
and it's not to say that we don't plan and we don't
have
of course. No, a template of what works in what situations, but again, when it goes kaboom, like live broadcast, we're very similar to the big, like NBC truck. Right. They have to make it right. They get a little more advanced time to make sure everything's ringed out, but
time is the driver.
Yeah.
Right. That's the driver.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, do you have in terms of where you've gotten the most kind of satisfaction, is there something that you found to be more or less rewarding? Because I know, it's funny. My first experience into there being other things in this business other than rentals and staging was at Infocom. And it was just like, wow, this huge building is full of stuff. And only this piece over here has the people that are like us, that have that like burn in their soul of like, things have gone wrong for us before.
Yeah.
But so I certainly get some satisfaction over when things go really well, because you know how tight the margin is. But is there any more or less places in terms of where that satisfaction comes from, or is any one of those pieces give you more than the others?
Well, it depended on when I was doing it, right? When I was in the field and that was what I really wanted to do, I really enjoyed just making that show happen, being on time, making sure that we got every cue exactly as it should be. Early in my career, I did a lot of slide projection. And Brian, you may not know this, but there was a time when slide projectors, you could have up to 40 of them running in synchronization and doing full animations with them and creating wild shows. And just accomplishing that was the greatest satisfaction in the world. Plus, Joe can vouch for me, the sound of those machines running, going clickety-clack it was almost musical.
The only sound I've ever heard a slide projector make is the sound of it exploding on a rock after dropped off 3 stories on Jim Marlowe's retirement party.
Yeah, but they were fun machines. They were tactile.
Very much so.
But as I grow, managing, when I managed for an automation manufacturer, I really enjoyed getting those guys trained and educated and guiding them along with things that needed to happen. I worked for a company in which they went from just being maybe simple switching and automation to having everything in the world, from full-scale lighting and in-wall lighting to giant cabinets to networking and sending video and audio at 1080p or higher, 4K over category cable. Getting them going was always a thrill, and knowing at the end of the day, hey, we got those guys going and that job was accomplished, and our dealers lived another day, and it was great.
It's pretty cool. Like I was saying, there's not a lot of people that have that variety. And so, there's different things that work and excite people in different industries. And these are all slight segments of our big, giant AV world out there. But it does kind of kick in as we've had some internal discussions about education in the AV industry, and I think that's always a moving target. And of course, we talk about Pirate University, which many of our viewers got to see live this past year, because we did stream almost every class, and we have clips up on our YouTube page now of most of the main sessions anyways. But what's currently available to people who are just joining the industry, and anything you'd recommend to people who are new to the business?
Well, it's a hodgepodge right now, right? I think there's a few companies out there that do somewhat of a coverage of the staging world, but it's more of the soft skills. There's a lesser focus on the real technology that happens behind the scenes. There's AVX, of course, which is the parent of the Infocom's trade show. They have some stuff. They've been back and forth about what really live rental staging plays in that world. So it's you have to sort of cobble it together on your own. There's AVX, there's NAB, there's LDI, the lighting trade show. There's AES. All of those have factors, and all of them have sites or people associated with those sites who do some training and some online stuff that can get you started and get you at least familiar with that technology. I know that that's a big part of it. Like, just going in cold is sort of daunting. which part do I need to know? How do I need to know? What's important for me to at least get going? And just getting a sampling of those can help, but there's very few comprehensive and cohesive, this is the industry, let's train you. I know that AVX and CEDIA, which is the residential side of installations, basically, have these track courses that take you through the different levels and get you trained and give you more and more skills and to fine tune those skills. But we don't have that. We've been a hodgepodge company, musicians and artists and lighting people and people from different factors that just sort of come into the realm and say, I have the ability to make this work. And I have the work ethic of getting in and working those long hours that we have to work. So I think we need to upgrade that and find a way to create one.
You know what we need? We need somebody with deep technical knowledge who also has a passion for writing and training people.
Hey, yeah, well, I see what you did there.
You see what I did there? Well, I'm just saying, it seems like there's a gap in the marketplace and something that that you probably more uniquely than anybody I've personally ever met could fill it. But
well, I also have to say that there's probably not watching, but there's a gentleman named John Huntington, who is a local one audio guy. He was a stagecraft extraordinaire, taught at CUNY theatrical stagecraft. I think he just retired. And he would argue that CUNY and his program did a lot of that. They taught people lots of stuff. But I find very little of it based on this industry. You have audio, you have video people, but you don't really have that, hey, how to be a live events person.
Well, and I guess not to cut you off, but I feel like one thing that may be happening, and I'm curious about your take here, is, are there guys or guys and gals that are specifically looking to get into rentals and staging? Because it almost seems like, a recurring theme of people, back to our early point of getting into it by accident and then just kind of going with the flow, that it almost never needed to exist because the people who are here are, are pirates and kind of just ended up here and got pulled into it and, self-taught or taught by someone specific. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's an amorphous thing that they don't realize it's out there. Right. I don't think they understand what the industry really is. And that, again, we mentioned in the beginning, we don't have to be Clare Brothers. You don't have to be on rock and roll tours to start. You can do local stuff. The core of the industry is the local corporate meetings, unveilings, all those kind of things that are needed, the celebrations, the parties. Those are necessary elements that are not just lights on a backwash and, a video. There's lots of interaction. There's lots of technology in there that gives you potential to grow. That's always been my passion about it, is that, look, I went away and worked for a manufacturer. I've done the tour stuff. I've come back to staging because it is my first love. And it's almost like the Godfather thing. It's like, as much as I thought I wanted out, it always pulls me back in, and I can't escape it because it is once you get in, it's passion, because you're never ever bored, to be honest. You're always going to find something to do and something to be part of.
Yeah. Well, I think it keeps developing, right? I mean, just due to the nature of technology is that if you have it, it's probably old, right? It's just like a computer or anything else. A TV, anything like that, but it's constantly changing. And so that kind of keeps the motivation to learn the new thing kind of going. And I know that, for some of our other people, that was always a thing. I'm like, wow, how does this person know that? They seem like maybe they wouldn't adapt to this so quickly, but that fire internally of like learning the new technology is kind of like an ongoing thing. And I think it's like a built-in way to keep excited about, the business. Ryan, you played us a clip earlier. Is there any chance that you have? Okay.
I also don't know if I'm allowed to share it, because I was told that I'm not allowed to share it unless I get express written permission. So that was a backstage thing, folks.
Okay, fine. No problem.
Do you want to paraphrase?
I think what the keynote presenter had said at an event we literally just did 2 days ago. That's why it's kind of a hot thing, is everybody should say thank you to the people who are working and putting this on, because they really don't get any sort of acknowledgement. And the only time anyone even knows that they're here is if there's a giant problem, and that they're running around like like ninjas, just doing things and nobody even knows. And he was pointing out how those are the people that help him succeed in his job, and everyone else who has that kind of, a presentation of some sort, or some sort of communication to a large audience. And I thought it was really, really cool, that he did that.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier when we were in backstage, and the reference to Black Flag is that for those who know Henry Rollins, the punk singer and author and speaking tour guy, always has a sign on the entrance to the stages for the other musicians saying, "You are not a superstar. You're not a prima donna. The guys who set up this stage, or the gals and guys who set up this stage and made this work, were here before you. We'll be here after you, and we'll have to suffer through any mess you leave. So we'll show them respect." And that's always, like I said earlier, is like it touches your heart because, like, yes, you get it, and it makes you work harder. Actually, like, I don't want to make this work doubly right for you because you get it.
It's pretty smart, but your points about there being kind of this giant gap in the training or how to enter, and Ryan, you had mentioned being at Infocom before and seeing, there's, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of square feet of stuff going on, but
right,
kind of what we do on a daily basis is squeezed into about 20,000 square feet. So it is kind of weird. You're like, wow, what's all that other stuff going on then? And I do think that there's a much better defined road on the commercial installation more than anything else. But yeah, there's not really a defined road in what we do. And that's kind of where our internal training came from. Because for someone to get started, we're like, all right, well, how do they get started? What are they going to do? They're going to push a case. Some guy's going to yell at them, say, "You're doing this all wrong, kid." And then they're going to like throw them in a corner and they're going to beat on them for a while. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, they got to start by pushing the cases and getting kind of yelled at, so the goal is not to start like that. Maybe you can learn something, and then you're more of a help right away. And then people are inclined to help you learn the more technical and critical elements. But I always looked at it like there's a kind of a role for everybody if you want to do it.
And the growth potential is, find an interest. You start to find that interest on the outside and you start to follow it. I know that there's guys here that I taught in the last few weeks how to solder and how to crimp, which are skills that they don't really teach you anymore. And they had never touched one. I never touched a crimper. And like, oh, here's how it works. And now you've helped save the day because there's a cable that went bad, or we're in the shop, we need to, reclaim these. It's a certain skill. Programming, the switchers, we were testing them. Hey guys, the wireless C world is also a fascinating one to me. It's where I started in this real staging world, where I started to dig in. Was, what is wireless? What are the frequencies? Why are we doing it? How does it work? How does it modulate? How does it get a signal over there? How does that work? And from that, you start to learn other technologies, and it leads you to understand the newest stuff. I mean, I've always thought that staging is also the most entrenched in the old ways and the most innovative industry there is, because we want it to work and we know this works. So we use analog a lot, but then we know that digital is really going to give us the benefits. So once it showed itself to be fairly stable, we embraced it full on, SDI and Ethernet, and there was no stopping it. Now, understanding Ethernet, you have to understand networking. Right. In order to be successful. Yes, you can be a good audio guy, but if you don't understand how your boards are networking, especially if you're using some of even the digital stage box or in the Yamahas and Dantes and stuff like that, you got to know how that works, at least to get it set up, because then you're beholden to someone else. So
there's a lot to know. There is a lot to know,
and
not a lot of good ways to. Right. Well, it's absolutely true. And the funny thing is too, you touched on, having like kind of specific skills. It's also the type of field where you can have this very niche, very specific thing that you happen to know a lot about. And on some particular day in your career, you may literally save everybody's butt. Like you may be the guy who saves the day because you knew that thing that you thought was absolutely useless. And, it's unique in that way, in order for you to be able to come in and save the day that way.
And I will add to the same reason. I mean, look, I work in the shop now. This is where I find satisfaction in helping train guys, but also knowing that what's going out is going out right. Whether that's just making sure that all the signal flow is going to be appropriate. It's not just pulling gack. and gear. It's, does this work? Is it going to give them what they need on site to get the job done? And understanding that also involves another level of training and understanding, where you say, how do I make this signal flow work? Does it get there the way it's supposed to? Oh, we need to do this. We need to add conversion. We need to add some kind of cabling. We had, and that becomes also a window into more information and more technical skills. And it's not just about, are you the superstar? It's like, did it get right? Did the team make it happen? And that's all about it. I know guys that are in the shop who want to do some on-field stuff, but it's also really good to be in here and just know that gear. And if they call, where's this? Oh, here's how you do that. Just, by the way, if you didn't know, flip the switch, do that. Oh, there you go.
Oh, look at that. The show is won or lost in the shop. I've heard that once or twice. I've heard that.
That's true. You can't do anything if what you get isn't going to do the job, right? So,
yeah. But
that has certainly been a mantra that I've heard over the years. And every time we look to try to say, okay, what's our next step and how are we going to improve? It always starts in the shop. I mean, it really does. It always starts with the flow, how something's being maintained, or how it's being packed, or what's going to make it move quicker, easier, again, because time is one of the main constraints of what we do. And that's the same with rock and roll as well. I mean, how much time you get in Madison Square Garden, George?
Haven't in a while, but yeah.
4 hours, maybe.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now I understood what you're saying. Yeah, no, 4 hours, maybe. I mean, how much is a ballroom? I mean, you go to a Marriott ballroom maybe, or whatever it is. Yeah, maybe. And then you have to be out an hour after it's over, Yeah,
so time becomes a big constraint. And so that we end up looking at, at the shop first for how to move that along. And the second, of course, being training. So I mean, in the case of training, I mean, how can we help people get skills in this type of, we're a little more of a generalist is the way I look at it, but how do we help them get more skills in this type of field?
Well, I think it's a two-pronged approach, right? It's specific skills for a specific job task that you want to achieve or do or become part of. And then there's the comprehensive side. So if I'm a first person coming into this for the first time, what do I need to know to be able to operate within that environment effectively, rather than just being something going, what do we do? Do you want me to do something? And that helps as well. It's always helpful to say, hey, I'm done. Is there anything else I can do? But understanding how to operate. When I went to trade school, they didn't just teach us how to mix. They taught us how the studio works. And they taught us how that process works and what your role in it would be. Hey, are you a superstar mixer? Great. Then you might get into doing that. But you need to know what the record company is expecting, what the labels, what the artist is expecting. And the same thing in this. What is the client expecting? What do we need to get done? What process and parts can you help us get forward so that it's an effective show? So comprehensive education says, how do I start? What am I expected to do? How does the industry run? And then, hey, how do I hook up a mixer? How do I hook up a video display? How do I hook up a video mixer, a video switcher? What does it do? And that's very small skills build into larger skills and build into a larger involvement in what's going on. I think it's both web. I think it's both hands-on. I'm a big proponent of hands-on training, at least even just for a little while.
Right. So I guess because what we've, kind of just said is that there are, complex technical systems that are built on complex human systems. And knowing one is great, but you don't know where you're going to fit into the overall, framework. So where does, in your mind, we've talked about what gaps exist in terms of education. Where does somebody who might have experienced this one time that's interested in getting into it, where do they start? In your opinion, where do they start? What should they do?
Well, the first part, I guess, is to do what a lot of guys do, is like call a company. Hey, I have these skills. I'm looking for employment. I want to be part of this. I want to help. And a lot of times that works out. Some of it is, just finding something related. Is there, some opening in hotel AV, which you then can eventually move it on to becoming part of the bigger picture? Is there, a need for that company? Look at the company websites. Look at the LinkedIn sites for, event staging, rental staging, employment. What are they looking for? And going in with a resume saying, yes, I'm new to it, but I really, really want to grow in this. What can you offer me and how can I grow? And those work out remarkably. I mean, when I first went to that staging company, all I knew is I had audio skills. Basic audio skills. I could, calibrate a tape machine and things like that. But it grew into other stuff that they let me learn. And it just takes that initiative of saying, can you use me? Here's what I need to do. And a lot of times that just works out. Otherwise, you find people. There's people on stages. There's event spaces. There's the little small rock venues or music venues. They always need somebody. And at first, it's going to be grunt work. At first, it's going to be the guy who moves cases or drags that cable across or crawls up a crawl space to make sure something's connected correctly. And you're not going to be at the top flight of the pay, but that is how you build from a scratch or with some basic skills moving forward. And like I said, a lot of these guys, when they're freelance, they find multiple venues to work at and multiple companies to work for, and that doubles your exposure and doubles your knowledge. And then you find the stuff online. A lot of it is self-taught. A lot of it is, hey, I'm going to go online, watch this guy I love for audio called Nathan Lively. He wrote a couple of books and he has his own little education program for live sound mixing. Stuff that's from the basics down to the real nitty gritty of time delay and how do I cross these EQs to make this kind of venue room sound right? How many subs do I really need? But those are wonderful resources. Some of them are free, some of them cost a little bit, but that just becomes the forward movement. And you've just got to get out there and find the venues and find the opportunities. And again, that's why we want to reach out to, say, like schools. I want something to be reached out to the public education system. Here is an opportunity for you. Here is a career that you may not have known existed and you can really grow in.
Well, I think, the same thing as you. I stumbled into this. I mean, someone had referred it to me and they said, you probably like that. I'm like, what is it? And I went on a show site and I just saw a bunch of people dressed in black pushing all these cases around. I'm like, yeah, I still don't get it. Like what's going on here? I mean, it looks like the ants are bringing the food back. Like what's happening? And then after a while, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah, that makes sense. But it was, again, just kind of stumbled into it. And I've seen over the years that people who seem to have some sort of passion for some element of the arts, whether it's drawing, painting, photography, writing, there's not as many poets, but still that's all part of the arts. You need the creative side as well as the technical side. Mm-hmm. And certainly people who are in theater or played in band are the most common, but it's not just them. There seems to be a lot of different creative elements and then it's mixed with the technology, but the technology is still means to an end for most people. Of here's what I envision. I know when we talk to clients, here's what they envision. A lot of times I'll actually draw it for them and just say something like this, like, yeah, and it's just scribbled on, the old napkin drawing, and it's scribbled on there. And like, yeah, all right, well, we're going to figure out how to make that work then. They're like, you could do that. But that's kind of the world we're in, right? Where you're trying to make something out of nothing. And I like the idea that there's many ways to approach it to still get here. And I like your thought about trying to speak to different schools and tell them this path exists, because I don't think they know either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't even know that they have recording engineers. Yeah, it's like, you can make a career. You can do this. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be your only job. You know what I mean? A lot of times there's guys, I have this creative side. Well, great. This is a flexible environment where you can work those few shows, your week off, do your creative thing, come back, and it allows you to live. There is a work-life balance, although we work long hours. It can be that.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely. So what we have is a PR issue. That's the issue. We got a PR problem on our hands. So we need to get the word out and capture some of this and get it in front of the right people who can push the young minds in the right direction. I mean, I remember being a young buck myself. I studied TV production, and my professors wanted me to go into the news, but I was like, I hate the news. So I absolutely don't want to do that, but I don't know what to do with it. And, you know, I was in bands, and I think I met Joe one day setting up an event, and I had no idea what I was doing. And
that was
10
quite
years later,
clear,
here
actually.
I am. Yeah, I
had
know,
no
it's true.
idea what he's doing.
Yeah,
but I
was
said,
enthusiastic,
there's
and I try
something
hard.
about that kid.
No, but that's it, you know.
Yeah,
I didn't
many
know it
years
was out
ago, I had a friend who was just getting back on her feet. A lot of issues in her life, and she wanted to get into movie production. And she said, "Well, how do I do it?" I'm like, "Well, you know, you go to school, whatever." I said, "But the mayor's office has film production. It's all listed in every city. What's happening where?" I said, "You go and you find the shop steward. You say, 'I don't know anything. I'll be your grunt for a couple of weeks. I want to get in this business.'" And she did it, and she got rejected, and sometimes, you know, they were kind of ridiculed, but she persisted, and she became a grip, a very well paid, very well acknowledged grip for many, many years. And she just did it. Like, okay, I want to do this. And, you know, it sounds ethereal. It does sound like, oh, that's just in the movies, but it does work. And it is what to do. And so you said PR, exposure is true. And we just need to let people know we're here and that there are opportunities. It's not just people with degrees or with a certain membership in a certain organization. You can become that, but you can also become someone who does it in a way that doesn't involve all that, and it's really, really open to you.
Yeah, I think you've made that point, you know, very much so. And the fact that you've actually seen it happen so many times and in different parts of the industry, and that's really exciting. Again, we've lived it ourselves in our own ways. And you know, there's a lot of opportunities in this industry. There's a lot of ways to learn. And I have a feeling that in the next, you know, 6 months or so, that we're going to be talking more about this. You know, we're going to have a different discussion, and we might actually have some ways for people to try to get involved and get people more aware of the industry and how they can learn too. So, George, this has been great. Your vast experience and education are phenomenal for this, and we appreciate you being on the show today. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. I've enjoyed it. Although, Ryan, I do have for you then. You want it at the end?
Yes.
Okay. So
Is it this?
No, it's not.
No.
Take it away.
Oh, sorry.
Let me ask you a question. When do you think the very first live broadcast of the World Series was?
The first live broadcast of the World Series. All right, you're asking me this, so now I'm assuming that it's an answer I wouldn't necessarily assume. I think broadcasting became much more popular, somewhere around the early 70s, maybe 60s, in terms of live sports. So I'm going to say 1945.
Okay. In the 1900s and the early 1900s, several newspapers had telegraph operators who would telegraph the action to their offices in Ohio, in Minnesota, wherever. And they would have outside their newspaper offices a giant board with lights and players on it, where they would move the players as the telegraph told them what was happening and keep track of the outs. So people could hear or see the New York Yankees in New York playing in Ohio with maybe about 3.5 to 10 minute delay.
Wow.
And yes, but they did that in the 1900s using telegraphy. In the same way that there was a gentleman, the very first subscription services that were ever put out was a gentleman who could no longer go to the Metropolitan Opera. He had become sick and unable. And they used early telephone technology to write a direct wire into his home so that he could sit there in his sickbed with a libretto in one hand and the pictures of the actors in the other and listen to the opera live. When they had it, he paid a fee to listen to the seasons that he would watch, which means they also developed some of the very first headphones for him because he had to do that. Now, that one I have to say came from a man named Mark Shubin, who's a audio video engineer extraordinaire. Worked at the Met Opera, worked all over the world, was part of the early HDTV development, who would give little tidbits like that all the time. But those are true facts, that it's some of the stuff we think is modern, it's just a different format.
You are like an AV, what's the word? Anthropologist or archaeologist? I don't know what the word is.
I would say historian.
Historian. All right, maybe that's a little more direct route.
I'm not digging them up. I'm just finding the facts. Giving them a populist framework so that people can understand them.
The difference between that and archaeologists is digging them up. There we go. Got it.
There you go.
George, that was a good one. That was a good bit of AV history trivia. I appreciate that.
Nice. Well, I think we're going to end on that note of AV trivia. There will be a test, so please submit your responses.
Yeah, right.
We're going to do a follow-up. Alexa, we're doing a follow-up. So, but let's get that question out there. But George, thank you very much for today. This has been excellent. And I think we should talk more about maybe how we can try to help people learn and get into this industry down the road. But we appreciate all of your help today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, George.
Mr. Finch, hopefully you have learned something more than just who Henry Rollins is.
I did. Again, I got Black Flag going in this year right now. It's pretty intense, but I like it.
And maybe
Kikakila.
The Kikakila on the Rickenbacker.
I got Rickenbacker right over there. You want me to check that out?
Yeah. Wait, you're in your virtual room?
In my virtual room.
Wait a minute. Is this not a virtual room?
Now I'm slapping the bass, man. You knew I was going to do that at some point. You knew I was going to do that.
Oh, I love it. I thought I was supposed to look dumb on this show, but
no.
Succeeded.
That's most of my value. It's just
very good. That was very impressive. I mean, you were on the Rickenbacker right
Clip
there.
cut. Look out for it on Instagram and on Facebook. About 51-minute mark. All right, Alexa, that one's for you. There you go.
Okay. Well, listen, Finch, we've done enough today, but many different ways to get into the AV industry and certainly into the event staging side that we're in. But thank you very much for George's wealth of knowledge and history and information. Yeah. And, I think this is a topic we're probably going to revisit down the road. But until then, Mr. Finch, it is time to wrap up. Let's land the plane, not like the FAA could today. They couldn't get him off the ground, but we're going to land the plane.
I don't know what you're talking about. So
4,000 planes didn't get off the ground this morning.
Oh, geez, I didn't know that. All right. Well, we're not going to do it like that.
Nope. Land the plane, Finch.
Here it comes. You can find us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, live every Wednesday at 1 p.m. So you finish your lunch and you tune in, okay? And while you're there, you can drop us a comment. You can be part of the show. You can ask questions live, and we will answer them. And if you miss, and while you're there, you should also like, comment, share, subscribe, all the above. It is super helpful for us to receive some love from you. So thank you. And if you missed this, you can find us on Facebook and on LinkedIn in chopped up bite-sized pieces. There we go. I hit them all. Landed the plane. Successful.
Very impressive. Very impressive. Well, time for us to go. Everybody have a great week. Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao, Mr. Finch.
Stay golden, pony.
Don't
hombre.
Oh, boy.